And joining us on the line from New York, we have Daniel Ernst, principal at Hudson Square Research, joining us. Daniel, first off, your reaction to the death of Steve Jobs?
Well, actually, the first thing that came to my mind was the heartfelt sorrow for his family. It's certainly horrible to lose a loved one. And the second thing that I thought of was, it is amazing. It's remarkable that you have an individual that helped found an industry, which is personal computing, as well as a company, and then sometime later to actually reinvent that industry with what he's done with iOS. So it's really not just about hit products that people were talking about in the prior segment, but it's completely different the way that we interact with computing. When he brought the sort of graphical user interface of the Mac and the mouse that I remember using when I was an 8-year-old in a store for the first time, it made computing sort of magical. And then he reinvented all that, turned it all on its head, and took a new operating system and made it very accessible that my kids who are 3 and 6 can use today. So you don't often get people who can start and found successful companies as well as entire industries, and then come back and actually redo that all again 20 years later. So that is remarkable. I don't think we're going to see an innovator like him anytime soon in technology.
That's right. He did make computing magical, didn't he? What about the hands that he's left to Apple? And are you confident of Tim Cook and co?
Yeah, and I've said this a lot over the last couple of years as this has come up. One of the many jobs of a good CEO is to build a great team around you, and I think that he has done that in spades. That it is what he knows about technology scratches the surface of the engineering that goes into an iPhone or an iPad or graphical interfaces that are touch sensitive. That is a very, very deep team. I've kind of half joked that you could probably pick up almost any kid that sits on the store floor of an Apple store and get him to go run marketing. These people are evangelists, and they're extremely passionate and dedicated to the business. So I think he's done a phenomenal job in creating a team bigger than he is. So that's what you want to do. It's not a company about one person. It's about creating an enterprise, and I think that he's more than done that.
Yeah, and he is more than an enterprise. Some say, even though he stepped down as CEO of Apple, it was his inspiration that lived on in the company. Do you think there will be any effect on Apple going forward with the loss of Steve Jobs?
Well, again, I think this has been somewhat of a foregone conclusion. It's a bit, morose, to think about in those terms. But I think, the market has gotten comfortable with Apple without Steve Jobs. Certainly, when it actually happens, there's a jolt. When he stepped down, there was a bit of a jolt. But, the stock ultimately hasn't suffered for it. And I think that the company is on a very steep trajectory of innovation and refinement and taking market share. So I think that if there's an impact, we're not going to see it for a very long time.
Okay, so talk to me about the inspiration of Steve Jobs. As you said, he made computing magical, and you can really see that with a lot of the products out there who are just trying to compete with the popularity of what Steve Jobs created in the iPod, in the iPhone, in the iPad. Right.
I mean, in all these things, in every market that Apple's been in, they have infinite competition. Right? People have been sort of all up in arms about how many different Android competitors there are for phones, and now with the tablets and Amazon kind of being almost a platform unto itself. But if you look at the computing industry, there are hundreds of firms around the world. They're in China, they're in Japan, they're in Europe, they're in the U.S. That compete with them, and they're gaining shares in a very mature industry, which is personal computing. So competition is not a new element for Apple. But I think what sets them apart is being able to question what the product, what the technology is, and have the courage to reinvent it, as they did. It doesn't happen that often, but
Right.
when it happens pretty steeply. So I think they're always going to have competition, and I think that just when the competition looks like they're getting the upper hand, I think that Apple has built up a track record of upending that.
Thank you so much for your time, Daniel. Good to talk to you. Daniel Ernst of Hudson
thanks, Abby.
Research.